Okay, so once again, this is going to be a very long form video in which I kind of just lecture about the basic runes for ADC because this is probably going to be this series. I'm going to be doing it for every single role, and it's probably going to be the last time like I make videos about the runes for League because I did the runes for the champions for every single champion last year. I would imagine that there's going to be some sort of major rework to them, so now's the time to like get the information on them out there. And once it changes, it's not like this information is going to be useless because usually things just get added onto, not really just reworked entirely. That's kind of how League evolves. They just, add one piece of clay to the next, and, you actually have something. But yeah, so with ADC, the primary runes you're going to be running are obviously in the precision tree, with some exceptions being in the domination tree, and then in the inspiration tree. So let's start off with the precision tree, as it's basically the main tree that we're working with. So all of these keystones can be utilized by ADC. Press the attack, giving you more damage with 3 hits. So this is with ADCs that want to be getting more damage off, and usually for ADCs that don't have a great keystone altogether. So a good example for press the attack is Lucian, Misfortune, sometimes Draven, because they don't really use lethal tempo, conqueror, or even the aggressive option. More so, just the more useful option in Halo Blades for a lot of meta ADCs. So with press the attack again, just giving you that bonus damage and then enhancing the damage that your team deals as well, makes it so that you all like focus one target and then you kill that target faster, and then through that the champion's usually providing more in a fight or getting more value out of a fight. With lethal tempo, you're getting more attack speed that ramps up. So obviously the go-to rune for the hyper carries that are very meta, very strong right now, champions like Aphelios, Jinx, kog'maw, very easy examples of champions that want to use this rune and abuse it. It also lets you surpass the attack speed cap, which obviously goes insane for a champion like kog'maw, who deals so much damage so quickly. Fleet of footwork, giving you some extra healing, not really utilized by ADCs, as the healing amount that you get from it is negligible for the most part and not very useful in the bot lane, because the way the minion waves play out, it happens so slowly that you're not going to be able to utilize that amount of healing that you get unless you're in a situation where for some reason you're just staying in lane and that works out without you getting ganked, TP'd on, or just some disaster happening. So yeah, that's why you basically never see this rune. And then Conqueror, some ADCs can utilize this, ones that can stack it up, or ones where fights go long enough for them to use it, because for a ranged champion, it does take them longer to build this up. Good examples would be like Draven, Kindred in the jungle, and then an ADC that uses Conquer. Let me look at some champions real quick. I'm really trying to... Aphelios, because Aphelios wants the enemy... If Aphelios is playing into enough champions that dive into him, since he's always going to be going backwards and has so many instances of damage whenever he's switching his guns, yeah, Conquer is easy enough for him to stack up. Ezreal can use it kind of for the same reason. He can build it up over time, kind of synergizes with how his passive works as well. And even Jinx could use it if she wanted to, but more often than not, they're going to go for lethal tempo. And then a champion like Samira, where she goes in and then wants a massive amount of healing. Conqueror, giving you healing for all instances of damage dealt. So a champion like Samira, where her fantasy is to be on top of 5 champions and, damaging them all with her ult, Conqueror just has pretty natural synergy with that. And then champions that don't want to use it are the long range ones that don't have any business like using the healing or the extra AD that's built up, and would use the other runes better. So like you don't want to run Conqueror on Caitlyn, for example. Alrighty, and then into the minor runes. You can use all of these as ADC as well. Overheal, primarily used by the hyper carries once again. It's used to function as a laning tool in Season 11, but now I think it's just more of a mid-game tool. Once you complete your shield bow, this just adds an extra shield on top of that, since if you're going, you need lifesteal to utilize this. The excess healing on you becomes a shield and then lasts for a pretty considerable amount of time, and then that shield, it just acts as more effective HP, helping you survive, and then also can help you in some trades. So like I said, it used to function as a laning tool, but now is more just for the mid game. In ARAM situations, you just have more effective HP before a fight starts. making it harder for the enemy to actually kill you. Triumph is a more common rune, especially for, well, how would I say it? Just the non-hyper carry ADCs, so champions like Xayah, Kai'Sa. These champions can't really utilize Presence of Mind or Overheal like every single time, and then with Triumph, they're just simply like healing more in a fight, and they usually work off resets in some capacity anyways, and then the extra gold is just kind of icing on the cake. And then with Presence of Mind, you're getting more mana. This was nerfed in Season 11, so you don't gain the maximum mana whenever you get a kill or assist, but it does restore your maximum mana by 15%. So if you're a champion that runs but once you get a kill, like you can stay in the fight, then it becomes pretty useful. It can also be seen as a laning tool, but the amount of mana you get from it in the laning phase isn't really that useful. So unless you literally can't utilize these other two runes realistically, then you're not going to be able to use Presence of Mind. And ADCs can use Biscuits so easily that it's really hard to make an argument for Presence of Mind over Triumph anyways. A champion that I'm thinking of is kind of like Varus can use it if he's running Lethal Tempo primary. Or even if he's using, like, say, Hella Blaze primary, and then could go Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace if he's running Lethality build, for example. So that's like an okay example of a way to utilize that rune. Let me open that tab again. Okie doke. And then for the third runes, we're primarily just looking at the attack speed and the lifesteal. Given the changes to items in Season 11, Alacrity really did lose like most of its like power because attack speed is so cheap. You're getting attack speed a lot sooner through your mythic item completion. Most of the items that you're building after that, so you're usually building mythic ADC item into a Zeal item for most champions. And then with that plus Berserker Greaves, you're basically at way more attack speed than you were getting with most end games in Season 10. So with Alacrity, you're trying to beat out Bloodline, and Bloodline's also gained a lot more value as well. So like not only is Alacrity worse, but Bloodline's better. So on most ADCs, we're probably taking Bloodline now because it's harder to get lifesteal in your build unless you're just building shield bow outright. And even when you are, like this extra lifesteal does usually just go a little bit further than the attack speed would. Again, because the attack speed is so easy to purchase in so many different ways. For like, let's say if you're kog'maw, it's like I do want that extra attack speed, right? But it's like I'm building Rageblade, Berserker Greaves, maybe even a PD with all of that, like with a lethal tempo. Like there's just so much free attack speed. It's ridiculous, honestly, for ADCs right now. So yeah, I would say with most ADCs we're going Bloodline. Let me see if I can think of one that would want Alacrity over that. Yeah, I'm not seeing one. Maybe Vayne because she wants to spike a lot faster. But yeah, so it's basically a dagger versus like the lifesteal of a Vamp Scepter with these two runes. And yeah, good luck beating that. Legend Tenacity, just not worth it on ADC because if we're getting hit by ability, that's probably our bad. We can also just run Cleanse. The ability should be blocked for us. And worst case scenario, or if we're trying to play a more aggressive AD, we could go Legend Tenacity plus Unflinching if you wanted to do something like this. This could be okay on like a Tristana, for example. But yeah, pretty niche combination if you really needed Tenacity. So that's that for the third row of the runes. For the fourth row, once again, you can utilize all of them. Honestly, like ADCs kind of have the better end of Season 11 item changes and kind of the better end of the runes because most rune trees, it's like the minor runes are just kind of like not useful compared to what they should be. So anyways, all of these are percentage damage increases. It's just how you get them. Coup de Grace, you get it through dealing damage to enemies that are low. Cut Down, you get it through dealing damage to champions that have more HP than you. And Last Stand, you get it by being low health. So you want to use Coup de Grace on champions that are primarily based on taking an enemy down and then getting a reset. So pretty easy example there is a Vayne, a Draven, a Jhin, with his fourth shot always coming out to finish a kill, or with his ult. Coup de Grace also, you have to think of these percentage damage increases. Like if your champion only has one instance of damage, so let's say it's like a Kai'Sa, you kind of dump all of your abilities and then get your passive off, and then if that doesn't kill the target, you don't have much DPS afterwards, whereas with a kog'maw, once your lethal tempo is procced, you get to dish out a lot of auto attacks, so the percentage damage increase, if you have higher DPS, that's going to be more useful for your champion. So you have to factor that in. And then with cut down, it's more if you're kind of getting these like free hits over and over and over and over again. So this is more useful for long range champions, Ashe, Caitlyn, Aphelios, Jinx, because if you're hitting a tank or even just a bruiser champion and you're getting the free hits, then this is going to be giving you more value at all stages. And it's not so important that you have more damage to finish them off as it is to just deal more damage initially, because if they're like half health, how are they going to go in, for example? And then Last Stand is more utilized for champions that are primarily focused on surviving. Easy examples are like Aphelios with Shield Bow or Samira with Shield Bow as she's going in. The champions with Shield Bow, why Last Stand is so good with them is because Shield Bow's proccing when Last Stand is at his max damage. So if we look at it, the max damage is gained at 30% health, which is like right as the Shield Bow procs, and then you're just getting that percentage damage increase along with the shield from Shield Bow, the lifesteal, and the extra AD from Shield Bow. And then all of that maybe synergizing with the Conqueror as well, really going together super, super well to like make the enemy think that they like have a kill on you when you're low HP, but then you turn the fight completely against them. So that's that for the precision tree. For the secondary tree, a lot of people get really lost in this one. They usually just do like one thing no matter what champion they're playing because it's like what they started on and that's what they're used to. So actually it's kind of three things. They're either stuck on Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter for some reason, or Nimbus Cloak, Gathering Storm, or Biscuits and Boots. Like these are like the only things ADCs really think about whenever they're playing. Or like, I don't know, basically it's just like the runes they're stuck on for the most part. So let's use some actual examples here so things make more sense rather than just talking vaguely. Let me see. What's the most played AD? Okay, Ezreal. Let's say we're playing Ezreal. And then this would be our rune page probably. And then for our secondary runes, we have the option of Transcendence and Gathering Storm for the most scaling possible. Given that you're going to be building tier, you don't have to get the mana early game from runes like Mana Flow Band and Biscuits. Presence of Mind could be more useful because you're regenerating 15% of your missing mana, or 15% of your maximum mana. That's more useful late game, which is when you would want it as Ezreal. You don't really utilize having extra mana in the lane unless things are like going a little weird. So for Ezreal, we could just go for maximum scaling, have more ability haste with Transcendence, and then more AD with Gathering Storm since we're a champion that's basically always scaling. Okay, and then for Samira, for secondary runes, Samira doesn't really utilize mana, so Biscuits kind of lose value, like a lot of value. The free boots are whatever. The free boots are more useful for the ADs that win lane because it lets them come online a lot sooner into the mid game. So they want to dominate lane and then enter the mid game pretty solid, and then saving that 300 gold and having the extra maximum mana on top of that. There is a lot of utility to that. For the resolve tree, it's like just don't even worry about this. For the sorcery tree, she's not getting as much as other champions would because she's a champion that's very focused on like team fighting and getting the most out of whenever a fight's going on. So that's why Samira uses like Ravenous Hunter a bit better than the other ADCs because again, she has that get on top of 5 champions fantasy and then kill them all. Kill them all and survive while doing it. And then really whatever rune you take after this is kind of whatever. Taste of Blood could help you in the laning phase, but more likely than not won't because that amount of HP you get from it just isn't as useful in the bot lane, given, again, that the waves play out a lot slower. Eyeball Collection is probably your best bet because you're just getting more free AD from it, and you'll eventually stack it up, especially in a solo queue game. Even though these runes are like listed as like domination runes, right? It's like eventually you will get a killer assist, you know, and if you didn't, who cares? The game was over anyways. And then Sudden Impact, like I'm not sure of the math on it, but I would imagine Eyeball Collection would just be better than Sudden Impact for a champion like Samira, even though she does have that mixed damage. So there's that. And then with Jinx, Jinx could utilize Biscuits and Boots pretty well because it's a champion that is waiting to come online. And so we would have Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Bloodline, and then Cut Down. And then with Biscuits and Boots, we're saving 300 gold on the boots, obviously, and then we're having the maximum mana with Biscuits. And since Jinx uses so much mana with her W, her Q, it is very, very important to actually maintain like a good amount of mana to play with. And if you're not like permanently shoving waves, then you won't actually be out of mana. Missing out on something like Nimbus Cloak and Gathering Storm isn't that bad, because more likely than not, if we're playing a champion like Jinx, we're going to have a support behind us, an enchanter support that is going to provide what this would have been anyways. So if you look at it more holistically, the runes also make a bit more sense, because if you're just looking like more, if you're trying to look at it like, is it just perfectly optimal? Like, I'm pretty sure Absolute Focus Gathering Storm looks the best on every single ADC, right? But like if we have a Lulu behind us, right, Lulu's going to provide more scaling for us than we really have to worry about. So it's more about, especially in solo queue, really, especially in solo queue, you know, we're not playing in LCK right now. The biscuits and boots just, this is a free 300 gold. Even if the enemy gets a random kill on our support because they suck, that's 300 gold. So we're even, you know, things like that. The biscuits, since you can't sell them for the gold anymore, they lost that value. But they also provide a bit more leniency when things get chaotic, because maybe you had to stay in lane, spent all your mana, but then a fight breaks out. You can use the biscuits and then have enough mana to actually do something in the fight, maybe. So there's a lot of leniency to this sort of rune combination as well. Alrighty, and then Vayne. To use Vayne as an example, you could go Ravenous Hunter. This would empower your true damage and give you more healing there. And then the secondary runes, again, don't really matter too much, probably just eyeball collection. Even though you do dash a lot with Vayne, the extra damage with sudden impact is really negligible. It's mostly just about having that extra AD so you have more true damage. So sudden impact, it really wants to be a rune, but it's really not. And let's say, actually, let's just move on. Let's just move on to the other trees, because I think we can cover some of the minor runes as well in these. So as you know, or as you've probably seen, a lot of the ADCs now take Hella Blades, and the reason for that is, again, because with the Season 11 item changes, it really made it so that you get a lot of the stats that you were looking for earlier, and it kind of invalidates a lot of what the ADC runes want to do. Hella Blades also gives you a lot more agency in the laning phase, because you immediately get three auto attacks. So any trading pattern that you have against the enemy, you're probably just getting more auto attacks off on them, and you can choose to back off afterwards. So most ADCs that will run this will be the short range, high damage ones. So Xayah, Kai'Sa, Tristana. So let's say Kai'Sa has Hella Blades and Tristana has Press the Attack. Kai'Sa walks up to the Tristana, auto. By the time Tristana's E and autoed, Kai'Sa can back off. So now she's immediately won the trade. So it makes it very hard to actually utilize any of the other runes, since unless you're playing from a defensive position on these ADCs, and since the aggressive ADCs are more common in solo queue and just in general, obviously the more aggressive runes that give you more agency allows you to beat worse players, and just, yeah, gives you more agency in the lane. So looking at Kai'Sa, we're going to be running Hella Blades, probably Taste of Blood, and then Eyeball, Ravenous. So with this, more effective HP, free AD, and then the on-hit passive. And then the thing with this too is that you have to compare it to what you're missing out on in the precision tree. For a champion like Kai'Sa, that gets so much just for existing in the game, basically, kind of like an Urgot of the top lane in a way. Just stand still, hit the CS, and you will be about the same power every single game, and when you get kills, you can take over pretty easily. So anyways, yeah, what you're missing out on the precision tree would be, say, the extra damage from Press the Attack, the extra mana from Presence of Mind if you needed it, probably just Triumph though, Lifesteal, and the percentage damage increase. But the thing is with Kai'Sa, you don't need the extra damage from these two to kill a champion, because all the damage is like really front loaded into the champion's kit, in Kai'Sa's kit, with her passive, and then with your build path being into Kraken with like maybe a serrated Dirk early, like you're gonna have enough damage. So having these runes are more useful for champions with DPS for the most part. Kai'Sa is more burst, and that's kind of true with champions like Tristana as well. Tristana, Xayah. Am I missing any of those? Callista. Yeah, just those champions. Which is kind of a shame. It really, like, I don't see how they released the items and then didn't actually like adjust the runes a little bit. Or at least like add a Hella Blades variant to the precision tree or something. It's super weird. But yeah. And then whenever you're in this tree, especially with a champion like Kai'Sa, then it doesn't really matter, again, like to get the percentage damage increases like this, or even to get like the extra AD for free, because you're already getting everything you need from your items. That's the thing. Since you get so much more in the items so much sooner, having these extra scaling runes isn't as useful. So it's more useful to get things that put you online mid game. So again, Biscuit's boots become a bit more viable for Kai'Sa because of that. So we want to complete our Kraken Slayer, since Kai'Sa is usually taking a detour into long swords earlier so she can evolve her Q, and then saving the 300 gold on boots goes a long way. Having the extra maximum mana goes a long way so that you can cast more Qs and Ws in lane, no matter how long like you're kind of stuck in lane, because most Kai'Sa lanes you're kind of at the mercy of the enemy bot lane to like when you can reset or not. So there's that. That's kind of a good example of like the Biscuit's boots on an aggressive champion versus a defensive champion like Jinx uses it for kind of similar ways, but not for the same like end game. Kai'Sa wants to use it because she can get away with it. Jinx wants to use it because she scales in a different way. She has like this hyper late game and doesn't need the scaling from the runes. And then Kai'Sa doesn't need it because she just gets everything she needs from the items, and then would rather be online a lot faster, and again have this leniency in the laning phase with something like biscuits and boots. So yeah, and it's not like you have to run these runes either. It's just what's going to work out best given the context of like solo queue, and then also how Summoner's Rift plays out, and then also how the bot lane plays out, and how kind of like what your champion needs to be doing at different stages of the game. But yeah, like I said, so many players could probably just get lost on like, well, Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm does give you the most AD on every single ADC, and it's like, that is true. But it's very, very hard to like actually get it going. So yeah, with Hella Blades, that's the primary rune that you're really running on the ADCs besides the keystones in the precision tree. And whenever you're running it, more often than not, you're either going Biscuit's boots for the extra utility to get online sooner with the Kai'Sa example, or probably just coup de grace with Presence of Mind or Bloodline, depending on the champion that you're playing. So a champion like Draven, if he was running Hella Blades, he would really utilize Bloodline pretty well. Whereas with Xayah, you could get away with Presence of Mind because you want to be spamming your Q and E a bit more. So, and then with these champions too, coup de grace gets a bit more value than cut down, because Hella Blades, you'll be getting the enemy lower a lot sooner, and then it's about finishing them off from there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting in a way how you can use these runes. Depending on how the champion functions, and it's not just like plug and play them all. So I like how that part's more diverse on the ADCs, especially given their build paths. Like most champions or most roles just don't have this diversity in comparison. So if you only play ADC, like you don't even know like how much leniency there is to it with what you can run, and then like if there's just worse options, like then you can't do anything about it. And in the other roles, that's felt a lot more. So yeah, let's talk about some of the niche runes. An easy one would be Jhin. So Jhin running Dark Harvest, because he just pumps all of his damage in one way or another, whether he's building Gale Force or Prowler's Claw into full lethality. Dark Harvest gets him a bit more value because you have this stacking component. Even in the laning phase, it's pretty easy to get the enemy low but not finish them off, and then the lane just play kind of standard. But if you have Dark Harvest, then you're stacking that up throughout the laning phase, and then any team fight that goes your way, you just keep building up the damage. And since Jhin is such a safe champion, it makes more sense for him to have a stacking rune like this. And since he doesn't need the extra damage as well, pretty similar to a Kai'Sa, where he can't use something like Press the Attack because it's just not going to work out. So yeah, having that extra damage that's stacking up makes a whole lot more sense for him. And then he's not missing out on that much either, because he can get most of what he wants here with Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. And with the shards, it's like basically every single time we're going attack speed, adaptive force, and armor. I don't think we really have to mention that. Some ADCs can get away with the magic resist, especially the long range ones. So whenever you enter the mid game, You just have that against, say, a Fed LeBlanc or something. It won't save you, but it might help. And then for, I mean, Senna, Senna breaks all the rules, so you can do something like this, and same deal, the percentage damage increases don't matter as much for her because she doesn't have as much DPS, and she's going to be killing targets at the same pace anyways. If it's not like saving you an auto attack or something, then the rune's usually just not doing anything. And with Glacial Augment on Senna, since she has such high range and her soul stacking passive, it's going to do more for her, especially in the laning phase. And then she's also a champion that's usually not CSing, or shouldn't be CSing, so she just hits the champion twice, builds up the AD, and that's the whole dynamic of the champion, basically, at least in the laning phase. So having the extra damage in the lane, let's say if you had press the attack or like a summon Airy or something like that, or even a Dark Harvest, like probably won't be as useful as just building up the AD because you're infinitely scaling, you know? So even if you wanted to win your lane, it's really not how you want to be playing the champion. So yeah, I think that's most of it. The minor runes to focus on, really there's not much to them compared to other roles, because with the ADC that you're playing, they're kind of set in stone. The main ones would be the percentage damage increases, coup de grace, and cut down. Obviously you can change them more often with some ADCs compared to, or just depending on what you're playing into. So if you're playing into tanks, obviously cut down's better, and then if you're playing into bruisers or squishy champions, coup de grace is probably better than cut down into them. And yeah, with the minor runes as well, you're usually just going to be kind of stuck on what the champion that you're playing needs rather than like what you're playing into. There's not a whole lot of like, since they're playing this, I'll run this, you know? There's like a nullifying orb if they're playing a lot of magic damage champs. And then if you're running this, you're probably running Gathering Storm on ADC. And that's basically it. So that's, yeah, with the basic runes for ADC, there is not a whole lot to focus on, basically. But I think it's good to understand where these runes are at, their power level, and kind of how they've shifted given the changes with the Season 11 items. And the main thing with like the rise of Halo Blades on ADC has really just shown like how kind of outdated the runes are in comparison with the power creep of like the Season 11 items, and where you get so much in your first mythic item. So yeah, hope that helps. If you like videos like this, be sure to subscribe, and yeah, leave a like on the video too. Alrighty, peace.